This is Back to Back.
Yo, what's up, back-to-backers? This is Willy Joy. Welcome to the show. This is Back to Back. You know what it is. This is my podcast, my little baby, and I'm glad to have you guys here with me. How is everybody? I'm back in the States, back in the saddle, baby, back from Africa. Mostly I am extremely jet-lagged, very loopy, but hey, what can you do? I had a great trip. Just got to embrace it, and I am stoked to be getting back on the podcast train with you guys. My guest today, I'm so excited for this. Destructo is on Back to Back today. Gary Richards, an absolute legend in the dance music world. And Destructo just released a new song called Loaded with Yo Gotti. I saw him bring Yo Gotti out at Hard Summer a few months back to do this track live. It's a banger. Go get that. And he also just announced his Let's Be Friends tour, which is kicking off early 2018. He's bringing along a bunch of friends, as the name would imply. Habstract, Will Clark, Golf Clap, Walker and Royce, a whole bunch more. I'm going to put links to where you can go grab the new music and all the tour dates in the description of this show. He's a great DJ, great producer, incredible event promoter. He just does it all, and he's been so influential on the careers of so many other artists. And he's just affected the way this industry runs, and you can't really say that about a lot of people. Before we get into that, I want to take care of a little business. First of all, I just want to thank everybody who participated in our Fruity Loops Studio contest over the last month. We gave away a bunch of copies of Fruity Loops Studio. Shout out to Fruity Loops for even trusting us to do this contest. I have lots more plans to do stuff like this down the road, and it was great working with them. Incredible program. Shout out to everybody who entered. Shout out to all the winners. I hope you guys make some amazing music, and definitely send it my way. And if you like what we're doing here on Back to Back, if you dig this show, make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're using to listen, and please leave us a rating and a review. That really helps the show grow. I appreciate all of them. I read each one of them, and they really do mean a lot. Don't forget to stay in touch with me. You can always email me at backtobackpod@gmail.com or hit me up on social media at Willy Joy on all the platforms. I love talking to you guys. You can send me anything. You can ask me some questions. Anything you want, I'm here for you. Let's build fam. Sorry, I got carried away. I promise I'll never say that again. So, Destructo on the show. I met up with Gary at his new office, the LiveStyle office out in LA. He just started his new gig as the president of LiveStyle North America. There's a lot of history there. Before this, obviously, he was running his own company, Hard Events. In 2012, Hard was acquired by Live Nation. Gary stayed working with the company, the brand that he had built, until 2017, at which point they separated. There was some uncertainty there. We talk about this kind of right off the bat in the conversation, and now he's with LiveStyle, formerly SFX, giant company. They own so many festivals, so many events, and it's really exciting to think what he's going to be able to do with this kind of portfolio of events and brands and just history under his purview. With Destructo, there's so much to cover because he's done so much in the industry. We talked for a long time, and by the end, there was still so much that I didn't even get to cover. One thing that we ran out of time for that I really do feel bad about is we didn't get to talk much about his own productions and his own touring as a solo artist. So in this intro, I want to make sure we emphasize that. And, he's been really pioneering new styles, marrying rap with the West Coast house sound, kind of assembling his stable of collaborators and peers. There was so much to cover. It was really hard to know where to even start, because I think if you only know Destructo as the man who made Holy Ship or Hard Summer, you really only know one small piece of what is a much larger career. You know, we cover his days working as a record executive, his early days coming up in LA, the warehouse days, the lawless days. We talk about how he actually came up with and started Electric Daisy Carnival years before Pasquale and Insomniac would kind of take it to the heights that it is now. And I wasn't expecting this, but we ended up talking about his family, and more specifically his brother, who was a huge influence on his life and a huge influence on the music industry. I even found out in this conversation that I had a very, very, very slim connection to his brother that I never knew existed before. And it was an honor to be able to share those memories. We also ended up touching on kind of a sensitive subject. We talked about the relationship between drugs and the music industry. You'll hear in the conversation, when we talked was actually the day after Lil Peep passed away. And that death hit me kind of hard. I was actually surprised how hard it hit me. I mean, I was always a fan of Lil Peep, but I didn't know him. I didn't have any connection. But when he did pass, you know, I didn't take it real well. Made me kind of reevaluate my thoughts about the current opioid crisis that's got not just the music industry, but kind of our society in trouble as a whole right now. And from there, we talked about the parallels between that and the heroin epidemic of the 90s. You know, heroin wreaked havoc on the music industry in the 90s. We lost so many talented people. And I think we are seeing it again with opioids, and especially in the rap community right now. It's an issue, and it's one that I don't have an easy solution for. I've been talking to a lot of friends about this lately. You know, the line between glorifying something in music versus the music just reflecting the realities that we're living in right now. You know, I think it's important for music to be honest. And I don't really know where I'm going with this other than to say that I was glad to be able to talk about this with someone who had experienced it in a different generation, in a different time period of the industry. It definitely just gave me a lot to think about, and I hope it will for you guys too. Destructo is a hugely influential person to everybody in this industry. I mean, he really has affected everyone with the records he's put out, with the events that he's built, a whole culture that he created that wasn't there before. It's incredibly inspiring. Let's get into it right now. This is me and Destructo back to back. Let's go. How are you feeling? I feel like we should start off talking about this office. Are you feeling settled in at all? Have you had time to process?
Not really. I mean, this is just temporary, you know. So like, I just figured. I got a calendar. That's usually where I start. That's my 18 calendar. But yeah, I mean, I feel at home in the company. But you know, they're building us a wing over there. I got like a balcony and nice little place to hang where we're sitting right now. This is just like a closet to get us by, but I'm happy.
How long have you known that you were coming here, let alone when you actually kind of moved in? And
I didn't really know till the end. You know, I really was trying to make it work at the last situation.
Yeah. And
it just kind of wasn't able to work. So, you know, not really till the end. And then I just made the move. And, you know, in the beginning, I was sad. You know, I was really bummed about having to leave my brands behind, but I didn't even really understand what this is.
Right.
And once I got over that hill and saw what this is, it's incredible. You know, going and meeting, I've already met, you know, Bruno and McKeel who run Tomorrowland. You know, I met Duncan from ID&T. You know, I've met with, you know, We Own Beatport.
Right.
You know, working with the React guys in Chicago, working with Made in
Love
New
those
York,
guys,
you know,
yeah.
Disco Donnie, even Life in Color guys, like just the my peers that I've known or played for, but I've never worked with. And now I'm having to bring them all together and work as a unit. And I think I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah. I mean, you've certainly got the experience, man. Do you see your role now? Obviously, I mean, it's just starting, it's just developing, but do you see it more as kind of an an overseer rather than focusing on, one brand or one specific event?
Well, it's both. So my job, I have two hats really.
Okay.
I mean, I have a lot of hats, but in this company, I'm the president of North America. So my job is to oversee all the divisions and make sure everything's running smooth, and giving input and looking over the numbers and helping with the talent and just kind of doing what I do with all those people. But they're all already really good at what they do, so
Right.
it just strengthens it and helps them. But then my other job is to recreate my new brands on the West Coast and build the division here.
Okay.
So I have it's a twofold thing.
That's cool, man. Yeah, that seems like kind of the best of both worlds. You've been in LA a long time at this point, right? When did you move here originally?
I moved to LA, I think it was like 1985, 86. My dad was in radio, so we lived in Maryland, Washington, D.C. area,
Okay.
New Orleans, and then LA.
Wow. So what kind of radio was your dad doing?
My dad's still in the business.
Really?
He's 75 years old. He's still in the business. But in the 60s, my dad was at like Woodstock, and he was on AM radio. The term that he tells me, it was progressive rock. And then in the 70s, I guess early 70s, probably still the same, progressive rock. But then he switched into like disco, then funk, R&B, and then rap.
Okay.
And he's kind of in the rap game now.
Really?
Yeah, he's
75 years old in the rap game.
Yeah, like smoking doobies with Snoop. And my dad's way cooler than me, man.
Wow. I mean, I guess Snoop's kind of old now too. Everybody's getting old. But was he like a personality, like an on-air?
Yeah, my dad was like a boss jock. He told a lot
Yeah.
of rhymes. He was the boss with the hot sauce. You may be the flower, but I'm the root. And,
Oh man.
he was a larger than life personality, but he was also the program director. So he picked the music, and then he was also a concert promoter as well.
Wow.
So I've grown up in music my whole life.
What was having a personality like that as a father like? When you were a kid coming up, was he kind of goofing around the house? Was he a big personality even as a father?
I mean, he was kind of more like, I don't know the exact way to explain it, but he was more partying.
Yeah, sure.
So he was clubbing, and he was, so I mean, he didn't really make it to the soccer games or the PTA, but, he took me to see Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. And, I remember I always don't know why I always trip out on this, but I saw Black Sabbath when I was probably 6 years old, and Van Halen was the opening act.
Oh, man.
And it was like on Van Halen's like first tour. And I remember like standing there with my brother, like watching David Lee Roth, like with the fan and like changing his clothes and the spandex, and
man.
being a 6-year-old kid, like sitting on the side of the stage, like my dad was babysitting us. It's like,
Yeah.
we definitely shouldn't have been there, but that like stained my mind forever.
Those are special moments, man. I remember my first concert ever. I was a little younger, and I started going to shows in like the mid to late 90s. And my first show ever, my dad took me to, it was White Zombie in Minnesota. It was a very similar thing where I probably shouldn't have been there.
Right.
And he, I think, felt very out of place. And then later I saw Black Sabbath at an Ozfest, I think a couple of years later, and that was a pretty legendary moment for little 16-year-old me.
Tight. Yeah, I like Rob Zombie. I did a couple remixes for Rob Zombie over the years.
Did you really?
Yeah, it wasn't Destructo.
Okay.
I don't even remember what the names were, but I worked with my guys in God Lives Underwater, and we did a couple different things for Zombie. Thunder Kiss, I think. And
Oh, yeah,
actually,
the early records.
I think I did a remix as Destructo for Thunder Kiss, but then I did something back, Channel X, and I don't know. I did like 3 remixes
Yeah.
for him. He was always into cool electronic stuff.
I was going to say, he's been ahead of the curve, especially for, I don't even know if you can still call him metal. I don't know what to call him. He's just kind of
Theater.
He's in his own lane. But, even in the 90s, they were putting out dance remixes. No metal band was doing that, you know.
He was always into the cool production.
So, coming up, your dad is a radio personality. I assume that meant he was pretty cool with you just jumping headfirst into the music scene. Was he encouraging?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, my dad, he wanted me to go into radio. So when I was in high school on summer vacation, I'd be on the radio at his radio station. So he would be on 3 to 7. My brother was 7 to midnight, and then I was midnight to 6.
Whoa.
I was overnights, and there was a couple times where I fell asleep, and
wow.
I just knew radio wasn't really the thing that I wanted to do. I love radio. I love the whole process. I respect it. Like I understand it, but I wanted to be more on the other side of the artists. I wanted to work with artists. I wanted to be more, making music.
And you knew that even at that age? You could kind of tell?
I just wanted to be more like creative. I didn't really know. I mean, what really did it for me was I'd really been into rap. I was scratching on my Radio Shack mixer or whatever.
Oh, sure. So you'd kind of started learning how to DJ at that point.
Yeah, but then I went to like an underground warehouse party in LA and heard, because I'd always liked Kraftwerk. I'd always liked Depeche Mode. Even the rap. Like when I was 16 in my car, like I had 6x9s.
Nice.
And then that grew, and I had a Serwin Vega 12. Like I built the speaker box and like hot glued it.
Oh wow!
And so like all the bass from like the 808s, whether it was in rap or Kraftwerk or whatever, those drum machines were rattling my mirror in my car.
Right.
Like I loved, but I just didn't know really what it was. And then I went to an underground in like LA and heard that music, like just that, without anything else on. And I was like, what the hell is this?
Right.
And then I was hooked. And getting back to my dad, him and my brother, by that time, they had graduated into bigger roles in the music industry. And I was telling them about this dance, this electronic thing. And they were always like, thought I was just nuts because they couldn't see it.
Right. Well, and at that time, I mean, this is early 90s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, no one could see it at that time. I remember that even as a kid. Kind of my entry point for electronic music was early, UK hardcore and breakbeat kind of stuff.
Cool.
And nobody wanted to hear that. I was definitely the only kid in my high school. Yeah.
I did.
Across the country from me, there were two. But
especially in Minnie.
Yeah, Minneapolis was tough. Although, it was okay. There were some pretty good, in the mid to late 90s, man, really pretty good underground rave scene for house and techno particularly. But
Cool, I didn't know that.
yeah, I mean, it was all improvised venues. So it was like, it's Minnesota. So we have like an ice arena that someone would break the lock of. And then we'd like go party in the ice arena, or someone's barn out in the sticks, Midwest shit.
That's cool. I've had a couple cool shows in Minnie recently.
Where'd you play out there recently?
I don't even remember the name. I just remember I was walking down the street and I just tweeted, "Hey, I'm in Minneapolis. What's up?" And literally like 20 people were like, "Hey, come meet us at this bar." And like, I just met all these people. And then I don't even think I played in Minnie. I think it was the Somerset Festival.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But I flew into Minnie and then drove to Somerset. So I just was walking around and then people met me and then I had them all come with me.
It's good people, man. Good Midwestern people. Shout out to Minnesota.
Yeah. All roads lead to Minnie.
So, set the scene a little bit because I think all of our listeners are pretty familiar with the LA of 2017. It's the beating heart of dance music right now. But in the early 90s, when you start going to these parties, first of all, were there a lot of people there? And second of all, what was the overall vibe?
I remember the first time I heard about this scene, it was from my roommate. His name was Jacques. I was living on his floor. I was paying him $100 a month rent. And I was going to Cal State Northridge, and he came home at like 5 a.m. and like woke me up, like, get up. I'm like, what? He's like, I went to this party and there were these people and this music and blah, 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 and blah. And I was like, dude, it's 5 a.m. Like, leave me alone. I got to go. Like, I think I delivered pizza or something. I got to go to work, let me go to sleep. You're coming next week. All right, cool, Jacques, I'm coming. And then so next week, of course, we got in his car and it was like a goose chase to just figure out where to go. I think the first event I ever went to was called Nectar. And you had to get like this button that had like a little daisy on it. And like you go to a map point, you give them $20, they give you the button and a map.
Yeah, people don't know about the map points. Man.
Yeah, and then we rolled down to like, Alameda and who knows where. And you go into this warehouse where there's like, homeless people outside and broken windows. And you're like, we're going to get robbed. Like, where are we going? Because downtown LA at that time was pretty sketchy.
Right.
And you walk in and all of a sudden there's these like film loops on the wall and they're playing acid house music and there's like girls and everyone's wearing these like freaky clothes and it was like a whole scene. It was a vibe, and it wasn't like candy ravers, it was more like in the early 90s, I think the LA people were trying to emulate what was happening in the UK, like at the Hacienda and like Manchester. Right. So it's like more like overalls, like velvet hats, paisley shirts.
Because, those were the only images of rave culture we were getting at that time, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't it wasn't really on TV. You didn't really know what it looked like.
No. I never even heard that music like back to back like that. And one of the DJs, his name was Mr. KoolAid. And he had his vibe going on, and there was it's just a really cool, interesting people in a scene. And so then I just started going every weekend. We just started making friends with everybody. And then I remember, for me personally, it was the music. And I there was one song in particular. It was 808 State Cubic. I'm not sure if you know that record.
I do remember that record.
So the riff in that record, I remember calling the record store, Street Sounds, and humming that riff to Barry Weaver, who answered the phone. I didn't know at the time. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I have that record." I was like, "Do you have the one that goes?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's 808 State. Yeah, I'll hold it for you." So when I went down there, he gave me like a whole stack of records. He's like, "If you like this one, maybe you'll like these two. Check it out." So at that time, he'd put the record on the player, put the headphones on. And I remember just listening to every record. I bought all of them. And then I got home and I was like, Jacques, check it out. And I was so jazzed, I didn't realize I didn't even have a record player. I just bought all the records, but I couldn't even listen
without
to them.
even thinking about it.
Yeah. And then I was like, shit, I got to get a record player. And then the next thing you know, I got my tape deck and a mixer. And to be honest with you, how I kind of came up with the name Destructo, I was pretty shitty at mixing. And like, I kind of was like a Destructo. Like I would, I'd be redlining.
Right.
I broke some stuff. I blew some stuff up, but I just kept at it forever. It was just a cool scene. And then all those people started coming back to our apartment.
Right.
So we, and you said how many people were there? It was like 1,000 people.
Sure.
It was small. It was like Halloween every night,
You're right.
But you had little cliques. But then they would come back to our house and keep partying at like 4 a.m. And Jock was like, dude, my security deposit in my apartment's like, you guys are putting holes in the walls and shit. So I kind of came up with the idea of like, well, why don't we, instead of messing up our apartment, why don't we go down the street? There's this club called the BBC, and we lived in Mar Vista, that we could open at 6 a.m.
How did you even know that at that point?
Well, I went down there, and it was like all these English. It's called the BBC. It's like where all the English people in Santa Monica would go to drink.
Sure.
But I looked at the liquor license that at 6 a.m. you can start serving again. So I went down there, and I was like, hey, do you think that like we could do a party here Sunday morning at 6 a.m.? And the guy was like, yeah, of course. Like, you can get people here? And we're like, yeah. So Greg, my other buddy Greg, we all lived together, me, Greg, and Jacques. And we were all friends from Maryland. We started this thing. It was called The Sermon. So we would go to KoolAid's thing on the Saturday night, the big warehouse party, and pass out flyers and tell people to come to the sermon. And we would dress up like priests.
Nice.
Come to the sermon. Sunday morning, come to the sermon. And like the first week, we had, 2 people. A lot of fog. That was my trick. Like, hit the smoke machines.
Still a good trick, man.
Yeah, hit the smoke machines if no one's there. And I was DJing because I couldn't afford anyone playing like Joey Beltram, R&S Records,
right?
Things like that. LiveStyle, James Brown is Dead. Just my goal was to be Destructo and play this really heavy, abrasive techno, electronic, whatever, to keep people awake.
Right.
That was my idea.
Right.
And then the next thing you know, we had 20 people, and then 40, and then voila, you got a line of 400 people at 6 a.m. to come to the sermon, and we're known as the Sermon Boys, and we kind of arrived. It was cool.
Yeah, that's an incredible scene, and that's a special time too, because I think that's a time before anyone really cared if you wanted to throw a party at 6 a.m, a little more lawless. Like,
oh, yeah.
You could kind of just invent an idea and do what you wanted and no one was going to stop you.
We were on nobody's radar. I mean, we were underground, for real.
Did you ever run into trouble with that early on?
No, because the BBC is it's a club. Like,
so they were licensed.
Yeah. The problem is that, I never really did the warehouse break-ins. KoolAid did. We eventually became partners, and then I was like, dude, why don't we go rent a warehouse? Why are we breaking into this warehouse? This is not smart business, because as much as I'm like, love dance music and partying and being creative, I'm also kind of a businessman. Yeah. And so I was like, hey, maybe we should get insurance.
Right.
Huh? Yes, Steve, let's get some insurance, just in case,
So even back then you were thinking about how you could grow it.
I'm always just, for whatever reason, I'm like responsible partier.
Yeah. Well, and at that time, you're still in college. What were you studying in college?
I was a political science major at Cal State Northridge.
Nice, man. And so at what point did the music and the shows and the DJing kind of take over the studies?
Well, the real turning point was, like I said, I delivered pizza. I delivered Chinese food and pizza, and I always remember the manager used to give me shit because I didn't shave and I didn't wear the bright. But
Very quick tangent on that. I used to work for Papa John's Pizza, and I've had a beard since I was like 16 years old. There's one time in suburban Minneapolis, apparently Papa John himself was going to come visit our store.
Is there even a Papa John?
There is. He's like some asshole conservative right-wing
Fuck you,
dude.
Papa John.
Yeah, no, fuck you for real. And fuck you twice because they made me go home with no pay because he would not have approved of my beard, apparently.
Did you work there or were you delivery?
I was a delivery boy, but I mean, I also like made the pizzas in the store and all that. But
I can one up you on that though. So what
go.
happened to me was I got fired for not following. Or no, actually, I didn't get fired because what my thing was is that I could do like 3 deliveries in the time it took someone to do 1.
Right.
So I was like hustling, and then I remember the dude told me to go home and shave and like iron my clothes. So I was like, okay, cool. And I went to my buddy's house and we like got a 6-pack and we ordered like 20 meals and never came back. And then I switched from Chinese food to pizza.
nice.
But I don't even know where I was going with that story. Oh, I know where I was going. So with the pizza, I don't know, maybe I make $100 a night, $150 a night, and then I'd hustle so I could go meet up with Greg and Jacques, and then we could go to the club.
Yep.
And then I'd go to school during the week, and then the sermon, I remember, once we started getting, 300 people, 400 people, I started making $1,000 or $2,000 on the, in a week. And Jock and we were making money, and like I just remember at the pizza joint delivering pizza with kids that graduated from USC and UCLA,
right,
delivering pizza.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I can make $100 a night doing this, or I could do a club and DJ what I love. I'm getting paid, and if I finish school and I graduate, that's not going to guarantee me anything. So I just kind of followed my heart and went with it, and like never looked back. And I did 2.5 years of college and never finished.
No, man, I think that's sometimes the way. I mean, I went to a 4-year college and I have a degree in music, but honestly, even that degree, I look back and I'm like, I probably could have spent my time differently. I don't know that it really advanced my career any more than if I had just kind of hustled on my own. And certainly it would have cost me and my family less money,
Yeah.
I think
what
about
school?
that. Brown.
Brown. Oh, wow.
There's like I've talked about this on this show before, but there's like a secret society of like Ivy League DJs, man.
Really?
It's like, no one talks about it, but there was, at Brown, my year, Sammy Bananas from Fool's Gold was there.
Tight.
He was in a bunch of my classes. And there's been, man, I'm not going to list
maybe
them,
there's an event there.
Yeah,
an Ivy League DJ event that I put together. No, it's cool because what I've realized, now that I'm kind of like rising up in the corporate world, the thing about college is that I found there is that clique of people who went to Stanford, of people that went to Harvard Business, like in these guys that I'm friends with now. We're just friends.
Sure.
But that really helps you in business. But I think you got to really know what you're doing and you got to use it for something specific. A lot of people I think don't know what to do, so they just go to college and maybe they could be working instead or already working towards their goal. I mean, I never really I'm kind of a hyper A type person where like I keep all my options open always.
Yeah.
So like I'm delivering pizza while I'm working another job. I think I was interning at Power 106 at the same time.
Oh, okay.
And doing DJing and.
Do you feel penned in if you kind of get stuck just doing one thing?
I don't really feel penned in. That's just me, man. Like I just like to have options and like I don't really close doors and I have a big capacity to do a lot of stuff.
Right.
Without messing it up.
So how did the sermon progress from there? Did you mess it up? Were there any kind of stumbles early on? Like, what did you learn in those early days of throwing shows?
Well, the sermon just grew. What I learned is that I was just kind of tired of doing it at 6 a.m. on a Sunday.
That's fair.
So we found a warehouse and we decided, okay, let's go Saturday night and try to compete with the big boys. We called it Midnight Mass. And we had a great warehouse. It was on the west side where everything else was downtown. We were like from Marina Del Rey.
Right.
So the place, it was on the corner of Sepulveda and Olympic. It's now like a golf warehouse where they sell golf stuff. But at the time, artist lived there named Pedrazi. And Pedrazi was watching the warehouse for the owner, and he painted these art pieces. And we had Pedrazi's warehouse. It was really cool, but we didn't have the crowd. Like KoolAid had the guests, the mailing list. He had... I wasn't able to expand to that level.
Right.
So for the third one, we came up with, okay, where would be the best place to party with all of our friends like this? And, we surfed as well. Greg and Jacques.
Okay.
They were more into surf. I skateboard, but we would surf, go to the beach. Like, what if we did this in a water park? So we went. It's funny. The guy who ran the water park was from Minneapolis.
Okay.
Because there's a story in Details magazine. You could check it out. It was in 1991. Details magazine. A guy named Legs McNeil. Do you know Legs?
Oh
McNeil?
yeah. Not personally, but I know
He
who that
wrote
is.
the story and he followed us around. But we rented this water park. It had like 4 slides. It was like a putt-putt golf. Couple slides. And I just realized, though, that we weren't going to be able to get the people. So I called KoolAid. I found KoolAid and said, hey, would you want to partner with me? I got this water park.
Right.
And he's like, let me see it. So he checked it out. He's like, this is great. So we called it, because he was double hit Mickey. So it was Magical Mickey's Holy Water Adventure.
Oh my God, that's such a classic 90s rave name.
Yeah, so it was, and there's a flyer, KoolAid drew with Mickey Mouse with the swim cap and the cross and the flippers. And everything was going great. It was kind of the, because we would always just advertise a phone number.
Well, yeah, let's just take really quickly for people who don't know, the way people found out about these events, where they were. You didn't get the information beforehand, right?
No, because we didn't even have a location. Most of the time, we didn't even have the location.
Right.
We were working on that. But yeah, we have a phone number, so you can call an audible if you need to change.
Right.
If the warehouse gets busted or something happens. So we put the phone number. And, you can read the story, but basically in a nutshell, what happened is the water park that we had, we used the verbiage. So they had this come slide down the slippery slide, 100,000 gallons of this and this, there was a fire truck, So KoolAid, he was more creative than me. Like he did the, come slide down Mickey's 4 slides with 100,000 gallons and the play on Mickey's fire truck.
Right.
And so on the flyer, we had all that verbiage. And the guys who ran the warehouse, because there's always haters, right?
Yeah.
Even day one.
Then.
So the guys that ran the warehouse were like, F these surf kids, sermon boys, F you, trying to pull our location, killing our business to go to this water park. So they called the guy that ran the water park and told them that it was like, this underground. We told them it was like we were filming a water movie and it was a rap party, with our suits. He showed them the flyer. Mickey Mouse, I think he had a hit of acid on his tongue or something. And the guy called us, and it's funny because I remember Minneapolis, it's in the article. He goes, "You think I don't know what Mickey Mouse means in Minneapolis?" He goes, "I'm from Minneapolis. I know what Mickey." I go, "What does Mickey Mouse mean?" It's Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
So he's like, "Here's your deposit back. You can't have the water park. Like you're out. You're done." And this was on the Monday, and the party was Saturday. Now we'd been promoting this thing for 3 months.
Wow.
And it was like it was way hotter than anything else we had done because it was a water park instead of a dirty warehouse.
And I'd imagine you had more money into it than ever before.
Well, it was cheap. I mean, back then it was always, for us, it was a ton of money, but, it was a couple grand.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, in relative terms.
Not like today.
No.
But so then what happened is I had to call KoolAid, who I barely knew, and I was like, "Hey, Steve, we don't have a water park." And he was like, "What the fuck? Blah, 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 blah. We've been promoting Mickey. You're going to ruin my brand." Da, da, da. I'm like, "Just chill, dude. I'll figure it out. Like, give me a minute, right?" There's more than one water park in Southern California.
Right.
So I had this little putt-putt golf with the batting cages. So we did it. I worked at Power 106 as an intern, and we did some events at Wild Rivers in Irvine. So I drove down there on the Tuesday, and I met with the general manager, and I was like, "Hey, we want to do a party here Saturday night." And she's like, "Saturday night? Like, how are you going to get people here?" "Well, we did this movie and we're closing and it's some of our friends and da-da-da." And she's like, "Okay, well, how much of the park do you want?" She's like, "How about we'll give you this half of the park? You can have the wave pool, you can have the Colossus, like we went from 4 slides and a putt-putt golf to Wild Rivers in Irvine, which is like, it's either Raging Waters or Wild Rivers.
Right, yeah.
And so I was like, "Oh, you know what? All right, I'll take the wave pool. And she's like, "Oh, we can heat the rides because you want to go till 4 a.m, so we can heat the water and we'll make it great." And I was just like, "Are you kidding?" Like, I could not believe it. It's like, I'm like, we got Wild Rivers. And then KoolAid was like, "But that's, 70 miles from LA.
Right.
Who's going to drive there?" Because they're used to going. I go, "You know what, Steve? We'll have him get off We'll have him get off and give him something, and then we'll give him gas." So we rented a gas station. I set up some decks, and
I love this.
we made it a whole goose chase.
Yeah.
And when we got there, it was the party of it was the party.
I mean, had anything? Well, how many?
No one
people,
had ever gone.
I was going to say, had anything of that scale happened in the area before?
I broke the mold of not going to the warehouse.
Right.
Then everyone started driving to the desert and here and there because in Cali we got cars, we can drive. It's not snowing. So, but before that, nobody. So we did it again, and then of course, then everybody wanted to do it. And then the park saw money, and then the next thing you know, Wild River's on the news because cars are being burned in the parking lot
my God.
for some other rave company that didn't know what they were doing and screwed the whole thing up for everybody. And then we had to move.
And that's how it always goes, right? But note to any aspiring promoters who might be listening, finding that out of the box venue. That's, to me, always seems like the key, man. If you can create a new experience.
Yeah, I think the key to anything in dance music, if I could give anyone any advice, is just you said the perfect word, out of the box. Everyone does the same thing.
Yeah.
Everybody copies. Everybody makes the same kick. Everyone tries to sound like Deadmau5. Everyone just whatever everyone's doing, do something else.
Well, and just like you were saying, you threw the one party at the water park, and then all of a sudden, everyone wanted to throw the water park party,
yeah,
right?
It's the same shit from day one. A lot of people in our scene, they're just not that creative. They're always trying to figure out how to be successful, but without being creative. And it's gotten so much worse.
Yeah, well, and this is something I talk about on the show a lot too, is, short-term reward versus long-term reward, right? Because if you see somebody with a successful idea, I don't care if you're a DJ, a producer, a promoter, just anything. If you see an idea that works, it's easy to think like, well, hey, I could do my take on that idea, and because I know it works, probably some people will like what I do. And so you can make kind of, a quick buck, or you can get your reputation up fast that way. But then, this is just me on my soapbox, but I think what happens in almost every one of those cases is the second those trends move on, or, something else becomes hot and the thing you kind of tied your horse to isn't hot anymore, you're left adrift. Whereas if you had taken the long game, tried something out that was, an original idea, something you came up with, even if it fails, you'll still stand out. People will be like, "Oh, the guy who did, that one thing."
Or you'll just feel good about it yourself. I can honestly say, maybe once or twice when I've made a record for other people, I've never tried to make something because I saw someone was successful, and then I was like, "Oh, I'm going to go do that and be successful." I've always just been like, I wanted to go to the water park with Greg and Jacques and hear the tunes and go in the water and go in the wave pool and hook up with girls and have fun.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about I'm going to make money doing this. It was just and even partnering with KoolAid, I just wanted more people there so it was good.
Right.
I never thought I'm going to make money. And then here we are, we're on my couch and I'm counting out 20 grand with me and KoolAid. And KoolAid's like, wow, this is the first time I ever made money doing this. Thank you. And I was like, oh, wow. And that's been the same with anything I've ever done. I swear to you, I've never set out, even with Hard, even with Electric Daisy Carnival, none of it was ever, hey, I'm going to do this and make money. It was I want to do that because it's fun. I can definitely say when I made records, I had labels, and I just realized, you know what? Just do the records that I like to play in my set, and it's for my set. And if somebody else likes it, cool. If not, F them. It's for me. It's not for me to get rich. I'm not a top line pop songwriter. I'm a DJ and I just do what I do. And if I can get my records to where I like them to play in my set, and Yo Gotti's on it and it works, amazing. I'm lucky, but I'm not, just because I got Yo Gotti doesn't mean I'm going to go make a record that's going to go on Power 106. That would be a Yo Gotti record,
right.
It's not a Destructo record.
You got to do what's authentic, and I think more importantly, what makes you happy, right? If you get stuck in a situation where you're doing something that doesn't make you happy just to try to achieve some, notch on your post or whatever, just go be a lawyer, right?
Totally. That's what I said to everybody. Yeah, if I wanted to make a lot of money, I would have been in an investment banker or a lawyer or something. I went into music because I love music. And it just turned out cool.
Yeah, man.
Thank God. Knock on wood.
Well, and I think that shines through, kind of everything we're talking about here, all of the events. And you mentioned Electric Daisy Carnival. How did that come about, the idea for Electric Daisy Carnival? Was that kind of right after you saw the success with the water park?
Yeah, kind of. Well, what happened was after the first and second water park, KoolAid, there was 4 big promoters at the time. It was KoolAid, there was Davin the Mad Hatter, there was a guy named Teff, and then there was Beej and Gary Blitz. Everybody was kind of a free-for-all, and everybody, I wouldn't say calling the cops on each other, but there was no organization.
Yeah.
Everybody was just, it was kind of bad, because we'd get one good one, and then there'd be a bad one, and then a good one and a bad one. And finally what I did was I organized everybody. I was like, look, let's have a meeting. All the big promoters, let's sit down. Let's get the calendar out. You take this weekend. You take that weekend. Let's work together. If your show's big, then my show's big, and we'll just grow the scene. It'll keep growing. So me and KoolAid started doing once a month. And one of the, and he would always come up with the concept. Like we did one was called Double Up. We did the Haunted Mansion for his birthday. It was his brother's birthday. And he would kind of come with the ideas more. And then one day, he just came in my apartment. He said, we're going to do an Electric Daisy Carnival. And I was like, okay, what's that? He's like, we're going to have a Ferris wheel. We're going to have a fire eater. We're going to have a bearded lady. I remember we had a guy on a unicycle over the dance floor. But he was upside down, like grabbing at people. We always had performance art. Like one of the things with KoolAid, like for Christmas, I remember there was one very large man. He weighed like 400 pounds, but he was part of this performance art group. And for Christmas, you'd walk into the Christmas Double Hit Mickey, and there'd be a chimney with smoke coming out of it, and he'd be stuck in it. And he'd be like, ho, 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 ho. And you'd walk in, you'd be like, well, that's cool. Or like, I remember one time, the same guy, we would always use the same guy. He was like bald and like 400 pounds. He looked like Butterbean, the boxer. One time they had him, you'd walk in and he was at a podium. I should do this for one of my events because of what's going on with politics. But they had a podium and you would walk in and he would be at the podium like yelling, like giving a speech.
Yeah.
But then we had sound and the sound would be going blah, 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 blah. And he would be like talking and there was like just blah, blah. And then every once in a while like flash bulbs.
Amazing.
Like just cool.
Yeah.
We'd always do cool stuff like that. So KoolAid had this vision for the Daisy Carnival. We went out and we found this field and out in, I don't even know which, it was like off the 710 or somewhere. I remember it smelled bad and it was like a farm or something.
Sure.
And we did it, and he drew the poster with the Ferris wheel with Mickey coming out. It was called Magical Mickey's Electric Daisy Carnival.
Nice.
And so we did that in 91. And then we did that again in 92.
And were those pretty big?
Yeah, it was like 1,000 people.
Okay.
Nowhere near what, I give full credit to Pasquale for what he's turned it into. Like, I could have never in a million years dreamed of that.
Right.
But Steve had the idea, the concept, and, it was a cool one that we did back then.
And you did it just the 2 times?
We did it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Pasquale. Did he go to those? Yeah. How did you meet him? Like, what was your impression of him back then?
He had like the Janko jeans and like, he was like spray painting and, I think he passed out some flyers and like he was just a scenester dude, young kid, cool. And then how it all progressed was, and basically, so I did 2 years with KoolAid and then on New Year's Eve is my birthday. So New Year's Eve, 1992, I one-upped everybody and I got Knott's Berry Farm. So because I had my whole connection was through Power 106, which is funny because I still am tight with Power 106. But my dad was in radio and he knew the program director and I drove the van. I actually crashed the van there.
Oh man!
But when I worked there, I said, "Hey, could you guys help me get an amusement park?" And the general manager was like, "Okay, I think I can. When do you want it?" I was like, "Well, New Year's Eve. It's my birthday." "Okay, cool. I got you Knott's Berry Farm." So on 1992, we called it. It was called Rave America. And I sold it out. It was like 17,000 people. But the reason why I did it was that when I started 2 years before, it was underground and it was warehouse and it was very like this different thing. And then it turned into this place where underage kids could go drink and it started getting kind of messed up. It wasn't what I was in. It wasn't why I signed up.
Right.
And so I said, you know what? This thing, like I even remember seeing like a McDonald's commercial with like a electronic beat. Like I could only hear that music at 4 a.m. in a warehouse in downtown.
Right.
And then it started there was a bubble going on, like where it started to pick up. And I thought, oh, now it's sold out. Like I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. So if it sells out, I'm just going to sell it out to the nines. Let's go big. Rave America.
Yeah.
F you. Right? So we did it at Knott's Berry Farm. I sold it out. And then what had happened was Rick Rubin started coming to my events. Thank God. He was coming to the Double Hit Mickeys when they were cool. And I think he really liked Destructo because he always thought that, he signed Slayer.
Right.
And he thought that the people that like Slayer were going to like hardcore. Like he sent me to Rotterdam Records to try to sign them. So he thought people that like, the Gabber, the metal kids were like, he was on it, and then
ahead of his time, man.
Yeah, way ahead. So in 93, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this Rave America. I'm going to blow it out. I'm going to go work for Rick Rubin because he asked me if I knew anyone who would want to do A&R for him. He hired me and my nickname at Def American was Techno Boy. And I stopped doing events.
Totally.
He totally stopped doing events. And then that's why I think if you look at Pasquale's thing, it says wide awake since 1993.
Ah, okay.
So, we were before that, and then he took the ball and ran with it. And then, fast forward to 97, he asked me if he could use the name. And I was like, yeah, you can use the name. Why don't I did a mix CD. I think it was mixed by some trance DJ named Dorian, and we actually made a film too that I released on my label.
Were you guys kind of in contact that whole time, or was he sort of just coming back? Like what made him think of it, 5 years later?
I don't know. He just came. It was weird because what had happened in 97 is we did Organic. They did Organic, that festival Organic. Are you familiar with that?
I know the name.
So it was kind of like, so from the time I left till then, it kind of like, it was underground. I really wasn't even paying attention that much. I mean, it was still going. I'm sure they were doing good stuff, but I wasn't really in the live scene. I was more like, I'm making records.
right.
I'm not a raver. I'm making records.
Mentally, you had moved on.
Yeah, it was difficult to put the people into one place because, we did have a lot of problems at Knott's Berry Farm because we sold it out in advance, and I told them, I've never even sold advance tickets.
Really?
So if we sold 17,000 tickets, you're going to have, my guess would be another 17,000 easy walking up. And they were like, well, don't tell us how to run our park. Like, we're, we're Knott's Berry Farm. We've been here for 50 years. Like, we've seen it all. I'm like, okay. And sure enough, like, you couldn't get off the freeway, the traffic. We shut the whole damn city of Buena Park down. Like, people were climbing the fences, breaking in. Like, it was bedlam, And
I'm sure they were really happy about that.
Yeah, they were not. Well, their plan was, what they did was, my name for it was Rave America. And then they changed the poster to K-Rave because the K is like their logo.
Oh, okay.
And they were like, okay, we're going to do K-Rave like every week because we sold it out. They're like, this is incredible.
Completely missing the point.
Yeah, and I was like, no, this is Rave America. So some people refer to that event as K-Rave, but it was called Rave America.
Right.
I don't care what anyone says. And so people were sneaking in, and then at midnight, got to have a midnight celebration. So we had 7 stages. And I had these djembe tribal drummers banging on the drums. And like at midnight, we had a fireworks show. And I made a 5-minute, I remember I cut it, edited in some archaic sampler that I caught my Akai 950 sampler with, 16 seconds of sample time. And I cut together this piece of all the 16 bar stabs of all the biggest rave tunes.
Right.
And made to a fireworks show. And the place went freaking bananas.
Wow.
And so they had to cut the power in the park to calm everybody down.
Oh, man.
And that's when, for like an hour.
That's such a legendary moment, man, because, I mean, you look at it now, every big festival of a certain size has a fireworks show and some kind of display and all that. But it's when you can give people something they've literally never seen before. Like, it makes me think of, like, the Beatles would come to America for the first time. No, I'm not saying you're the Beatles, but I'm saying the same reaction. It's like something people had never seen. People would like destroy a venue, like tear up the seats, tear their hair out, faint, whatever it is. And that kind of reaction, it just made me think of that because those are special times, man. I think I don't know if I've ever seen that happen,
Yeah, well, we had 7 stages, and like to be able to coordinate all 7 sound systems at one time. How it was so big, too, is I was able, once again, to bring everyone together. I got Davin, Tef, Gary Blitz, I said, look, everybody wants New Year's Eve. Everybody come together. I'll pay everybody, and let's all work together for this one big thing. And I pulled them all together.
Yeah.
So there was no competition. We were all in it for the same thing. The silver lining to the story, though, is when we went back to get paid, Knott's Berry Farm was like, F you. And I was like a 20-year-old kid. So I don't know whatever happened, but I never got paid.
Oh, wow.
And no one ever got paid. And there's still people today that are like, you owe me $400 for DJing at Rave America, like 30 years later, and like it was a shit show, and that was the end of raves at Knott's Berry Farm.
Well, that must have been tough. I mean, throwing such a giant, I assume, kind of first of its kind event in the area, and then not having the money from it.
Yeah, I think, looking back on it now, then I was just pissed. I didn't get anything.
Right. No, I would have been too.
I was pissed, and I always I'm in it for everybody always, but like if I didn't get paid, I can't just pay. Like I was a 20-year-old kid. Now, I understand what being a promoter means, but Knott's Berry Farm, made the money, or somebody made Power 106.
Right.
I don't know. I just know I didn't even have a contract. I was a dumb kid. It's just
Yeah.
like, we're going Knott's Berry Farm. Like, I didn't even care, but to be honest with you, it was never about the money, so to me, I didn't do it because I just did it because I wanted to do something cool, and like,
well, and you talked a little bit about, getting a little burnt out, and that there was kind of a bubble back in those days. And it's interesting to me because now everybody likes to talk about, in the last couple of years, there's been this EDM bubble, right?
Yeah.
And like it's kind of a new thing. And to be fair, I mean, it's new in that it's never been as big as it is now. But, I think just old man status, it's like we've seen it happen before in various ways, and the cycles of music. And I don't know where I'm going with this, but you also talked about the performance art aspect, and that, there's a guy at a podium and maybe even vaguely political, overtones of it. And I miss that too. Today, I think for me, that's maybe one of my biggest issues, is that I love the music so much and I love making it, I love playing it. But then as you get older and you kind of see how you as an adult fit into the world and everything that goes on into the world, it's like, am I doing the right thing by just kind of playing mindlessly and partying mindlessly? And, I think it's good to give people a release and an escape, but I miss the old times kind of, because I feel like even if it wasn't a unified ethos, it felt like it stood for something back then. I don't know.
In the beginning, I felt like this was my thing and this underground. And then when it did what it did, it kind of hurt me because I felt like, okay, cat's out of the bag, it's not special. But then as I got older, I was like, that's kind of a selfish way to look at it.
Yeah.
And like you said, the bubble, to me, I'm just glad that people finally got it. For me, more than anything of anything that I could say, I'm just proud to say that, it's funny, I said this yesterday on a panel, electronic music is here forever.
Yeah.
Right? Like, remember people used to say, is hip-hop a fad? And then, electronic music, we had our little thing in the early 90s. Then in 97, 98, Chemical Brothers, Prodigy.
Yeah.
Then it went away. And then now, I mean, like, it's funny. You know who said the best line ever? I'm gonna steal his quote. I'll give him credit. Errol Alkin. Dance music is like the flu. It comes and goes, but when it comes back, it always comes back stronger.
Yeah.
And that's what it's done. Like, every time it's gotten bigger. And so I think where all these people did the EDM bubble burst, and now people are into rap, and no, electronic music is here. You've got R&B, you've got jazz,
right?
You've got classical, you got rock, you got electronic, you got hip hop. We are a genre that has legs, history, and if it sells, Electric Daisy Carnival sells 1 million tickets or it sells 100,000 tickets, doesn't matter.
Right.
Electronic music is solidified.
Well, people know what a producer is now, right? Yeah. I mean, 5 years ago, even people,
right.
The majority I don't think would know. And now you have producers who are pop stars. You know?
Yeah, crazy. True, good point.
Yeah, I think about that all the time because that, it's so ingrained in the industry now. Even if, EDM or whatever you want to call it wanes in popularity, we're all still going to be there working, and I don't know. We're just making music on a computer, man.
No, but that's interesting because throughout my whole career of making records, I was always down with all the producers.
Right.
And I always was trying to get my bands the best producers, and working with, the first group that I ever worked with, they were called God Lives Underwater. And I met them through Josh Wink. And Josh Wink, I used to DJ with him in Philly.
Yeah.
And he knew that I liked rock music. And he's like, there's these kids out in the sticks that make this like rock music, but they make it on computers. He's like, I should send it to you. And that's when I was working for Rick. And like,
right.
I had my choice to sign just tracks, or these guys sent me this thing. It had like an Oberheim keyboard riff, and then like a David Bowie drum fill, and then jumped into this like heavy guitar with vocals, but it had synth and like electronic drums. I was like, what the fuck is this? This is it. And like I flew out and I met these kids, and they had their apartment linked up, or their barn, like Ethernet cable.
Oh, wow.
And they were they had all the ingredients, man, like classically trained piano, computer science whiz, math majors.
Oh, man.
And like,
it's like a scene out of a movie.
And like skateboard, like punk kids. They were called God Lives Underwater. I mean, I'm not really proud of them.
Well, and I know that name. I don't know if I remember their music, but don't a lot of pretty big bands kind of cite them as an influence?
I think sometimes. I mean, what really happened was two guys, Jeff and Dave. I met them, and it's a sad story. Dave, who was more the singer songwriter, and Jeff was more computer. They all went to see Alice in Chains, and they loved Alice in Chains, so they thought, let's go try heroin.
Oh.
And that was it for Dave. Then
Yeah.
the next day, let's go try heroin. The next day, let's go try. And I didn't know, and I signed them and I didn't know. And then I would go out there and like Dave was just off and I didn't understand. They hid it from me. And then I finally figured it out. And I was like, okay, because at this point, I was like, okay, you're getting out of here. Come move to LA. So I moved them into my house.
Yeah.
And so they live with me. And then the next thing you know, I got a studio in my bedroom. Jeff's got his studio. Dave's got his studio. I got my studio. They come and play me some guitar licks. I'd put a beat under it and loop it up, and like just, I looped up a beat.
Yeah.
This is incredible, But these guys were like real musicians, They could really write and play. And unfortunately, Dave, he would drop the ball, and I got him on tour with like, Dave Gahan and Stabbing Westward. They played with Gravity Kill. Like they were in that scene, Lords of Acid.
Yeah, I think that's where I know the name.
Yeah, I got them on the radio because my dad, I know radio really well, and I got a bunch of their songs on the radio, and they were really ahead of their time. But unfortunately, Dave, he passed away, and that they say drugs will kill you, and it's sad. But Jeff, ironically, makes he has a company called the Overstare. Shout out to the Overstare. Everyone check it out. Producers out there. He makes outboard gear himself. He makes them in America with his team, and pretty much every big studio that you would go into where they're recording a Gwen Stefani record or Ed Sheeran, they use his compressors and saturators. And he's just a computer nerd music guy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, Overstare.
Overstare.
The Overstare.
All
yeah.
right. What other notable acts do you remember working with from your time with Rick Rubin?
Well, so the signings I was short-lived with Rick because it didn't. Well, there was a few factors that played in, but what we signed was my first signing was XL Recordings.
That's so huge.
Yeah, which I'm
for
like,
me personally, that's so huge.
Well, Richard Russell, who is the owner of the label. But his thing, you mentioned the breakbeats earlier. He had SL2, Prodigy.
Yeah.
I signed them for the Prodigy. Like I had heard a couple Prodigy tracks. What we did was we did a compilation. So it was called XL, the American Chapter.
Okay.
And it was a compilation that had all their catalog on it. But when the Prodigy, that album came out on Elektra. What happened was I left the company and then they turned in the next record and Rick and them passed because we sold -4 records. Like we didn't do, Rick, it's funny because I recently reconnected with Rick and he was just laughing that he invited me to his house in Malibu and we were sitting on his porch overlooking the Pacific Ocean and he's like rubbing his beard just going, we were right. We were 25 years too early. He goes, well, we were right. And I was like, it felt so good.
Oh, man.
But we signed XL Recordings, but who would have thought that they would have gone on to be the home of Adele, The White Stripes, and Radiohead. Yeah. And I'm still friends with Richard, and we're homies, and it's so great to see that guy. He signed Adele.
Yeah.
Case closed.
Yeah, pretty much.
He owns Adele, he owns Adele's masters.
Yeah, you don't have to say anything else.
we signed Sven Vath, and he had a label called Hard House and IQ, which I think was pretty legendary because now everyone's like, Sven's the king of techno. It's like,
that's
okay,
early.
This was in 93, guys. I brought him here. He played the Shrine. And we did a deal with a company called Antler Subway, which had the Lords of Acid, Praga Khan, Jade for You, and the big one was Digital Orgasm was the one that Rick was into.
Okay.
And we made a video for a song, I think it was called Time to Believe, yeah. And it's an interesting video. And I remember Rick and we went to MTV. And, it was Rick Rubin coming to MTV to be like, this is the future. And I think they played the video a little bit. We spent a lot of money, but it didn't work.
Were they playing any electronic music at that point?
Nothing. But Rick saw it. And then what else? And then I signed God Lives Underwater.
Right.
And then that was really kind of it. Rick's amazing. I go to Rick's house and he's recording Johnny Cash. Like the picture of, I have the picture somewhere where we signed XL Recordings. And we're all holding Johnny Cash's guitars.
Wow.
I don't know why we all decided to just pick them up, but we're holding
and
he was recording Johnny Cash in his living room, kind of how we're doing this now. He just had Johnny Cash recording hundreds and hundreds of songs, just so smart. And at that time, I'm like, Johnny Cash. And then as you grow up, you're like, fuck, Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
Legend of all legends on planet Earth.
Yeah.
But at that time, you're like, Johnny Cash, where's the beat? I'm into...
Well, that's a crazy thing about Rick Rubin's career, right, is that it's somehow... It seems like he's been ahead of his time the whole time, and yet he also has all these hits under his belt, right? I feel like usually it's one or the other.
Yeah, well, that was my problem. I was always ahead of my time and had all this cool shit, but nothing hit.
Yeah.
And then finally, time caught up with me with hard.
So yeah, I mean, how did you transition back out of the label business? Was it kind of just a natural like trickling down, or did you just get burnt out with it?
No, it kind of. Okay, here's a good point to our story. So what happened was the main reason why I did kind of leave out of Def American was that my brother and my dad were in the business, and somehow they found out that I knew radio. So they asked me, this is crazy shit. I mean, I have so many stories. I don't know how much more time we got. It's so crazy because they had, so Richard had the Awesome 3. They had a song called Kicks Like a Mule. So we put out Kicks Like a Mule, and at that time at Def American, they're like, you're the dumb techno dude that does nothing. Like, leave us alone. We got Slayer. We got the Black Crows. We got Danzig. Like, we got music. Like, what do you do? So somehow I took this Awesome 3 record, Don't Go, with my brother guiding me, and
That's
started
such a good record.
I started. I cannot bear to see you leave me. I'm begging you,
that.
Don't go. And had the piano. Dun dun dun.
It's the piano that gets me every time. Yeah.
And so I started getting that on the radio because my brother like worked in radio promotion, and so he got me on in Stockton, and he got me on in Sacramento, and all. Like I was always that was my hook. I always got on the radio somehow, some way. And all of a sudden, we're getting like 200-300 spins on Awesome 3, and it's starting to sell. And the president of the label was like, what the fuck is Techno Boy doing? How's this getting on the radio? Come down to my office. Then they moved my office from the corner closet to in front of like the main guy.
Right, once they see the money.
Yeah, and then he was like, could you do that for Danzig? Could you get Danzig on the radio? And I was like, I don't know. So I say, Steve, can you help me how do I do a rock record? Oh, let me hook you up with Peter so-and-so Geffen. He'll tell you who you need to talk to and get it going.
Wow.
So all of a sudden, the next thing you know, I get Danzig going. And what I did was, which I didn't even know, is like a total accident. Z100 in New York, which is like Kiss FM. There was a rock station in New York that was playing Danzig Mother, right? We re-released Mother with a crowd track behind it from this EP Live, Thrall, Demon Sweat Live. And so that was the push for the single. And I got it on the rock station in New York, but somehow it was working, and they started getting requests on the pop station. And the guy who ran the pop station was friends with my dad. So my dad hooked me up with him, and he said, I think we could play this Danzig record. This is on like a Kiss. They're playing Melissa Etheridge. And, we want him to play our Christmas show. Could you get him to play the Christmas show? And I said, well, what do we get? Well, we'll add him.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do it. Done. So I got the ad, and I did it. And I went and I told the president of the company, and he fired me.
Really?
He's like, you're fired. And I was like, why? I just got Danzig added to a pop commercial radio. And then I called Rick, and Rick's like, you're not fired. And then he came back down there, and like, because the show was with Melissa Etheridge.
Right.
And they were like, we can't have Danzig play with Melissa. It's like, so anyway, it ended up breaking Danzig. So now I'm Techno Boy, and I'm like, somehow with my brother's coaching, I became the vice president of radio promotion. I'm like 20 years old. I don't even know what's going on. But they were paying me like no money. I was getting paid like, I think 30 grand or something.
Yeah.
And my brother's like, you need 100 grand. VPs get 200. You should at least be getting 100. And like, they wouldn't do it. And it was like a stalemate. And so my brother got me a job, and goes back to what we were talking about. He got me a job at another label for the 100 grand.
Oh, okay.
And so they wouldn't come up with the money. So I went to Rick, and I was like, you know what, Rick, I love you. Like, man, thank you for the opportunity, but I'm going to take this other job over at Elektra. And he's like, oh, it's cool, man. We're always homies. Like, I love just listening to music with you. And so I left, and I went for the money. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made, because what happened was I worked at this company as a VP of radio promotion. I was working a bunch of garbage records to I was going to Dothan, Alabama. Do you know what Dothan, Alabama is famous for? The boll weevil, which is some kind of bug that ate some other bug so that the cotton could grow, and it saved the South. Like, I know about Dothan, Alabama.
True legend here.
Because of this garbage. And I quit after like 6 months. And I quit because I went for the money. So, I just follow your heart, I guess, is the moral of the story.
Well,
I was with Rick. Like, what was I doing?
Yeah, well, and that goes back to what we were saying earlier, right? Is you have to do what you like. And if you end up in a situation where you're doing it and you don't remember why you're doing it, except the money, I
mean, looking back now, I'd pay 100 grand to continue have been working with Rick at that time.
Yeah.
Because then we probably would have continued to put out the Prodigy's records, and we probably would have skipped a few steps in breaking the music.
Right.
But, it is what it is.
And so at that time, once you left Elektra, were you kind of just bummed out, or were you able to kind of just pivot back into events? What was sort of the sequence there?
Well, I was bummed because I needed to make money, but I quit because I just hated it.
Right.
So then I got hired at another record company to do radio promotion because I just need to pay for Jeff and Dave. I need to pay because I started my own label.
Okay.
So I was just like, we're going to do this ourselves. Fuck them. You know,
Yeah.
I can take on the world. The spark that really kind of catalysted me to the next place was in 97 when the Prodigy blew up. They released Firestarter.
Yeah.
And Fire started going. It's very interesting because this connects to where I'm at today because Randy Phillips, who's 2 offices down, who's our CEO, he had a record label called Red Ant. And everyone was trying to sign Prodigy. And my brother was having a meeting with Randy about radio or something. And he said, oh, you want to sign the Prodigy? You should talk to my brother Gary. He's the techno dude. He already signed them. He knows them. Okay, get him in here. So I went and met with Randy. And Randy's like, we want to sign this band. I don't know. You know, all of a sudden for like 5 minutes, everybody wanted to sign techno music. Yep. Firestarter was a buzz clip on MTV. And I said, well, I don't really know if I could get him to sign with you. I mean, I could try. Like I could call Richard and maybe, but what are you going to do for me? I'll give you your own label. Okay, cool. So then I told my attorney. And then the next thing you knew, I had a meeting with like every label. And I got my own label in 1997. I went with A&M Records.
Okay.
And then it just progressed from there. I mean, I could tell you stories for days. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only other label story I feel like I have to ask about is the Slipknot plaque that I'm staring at on your wall.
Right.
There.
Okay. All right. So this goes right into that. So in 97, I had my electronic label at A&M Records. And our chairman, Al Cafaro, you know, he didn't care about Prodigy. He was interested in electronic music. So I brought him Underworld. I brought in Orbital. I remember the Propeller Heads.
Wow.
Fatboy Slim. Like I was going and meeting with Wall of Sound and what was the other label? They're still around. Skint.
Oh yeah, Skint.
You know,
yeah.
and trying to get electronic, and he was really into it. But what happened is Edgar Brofman. It's funny because our CFO next door to me, Chuck, he was the CFO of Universal Music. They were consolidating all the labels. MCA bought Geffen, and A&M was merged in, and then Edgar Brofman from Seagram's bought Polygram, and they merged everything together.
Right.
So the guy that I picked, of course, within like a year, he got fired, and they were merging my label in with Interscope. So at the time, I had received because God Lives Underwater. This is all tying together now. God Lives Underwater would play the K-Rock like weenie roast in Iowa. They were big in Iowa.
Yeah,
There's this radio station there called KKDM, and the music director name was Sophia Johns. And I got friends with her, you know, radio. Come on, I got this cool band. They make good songs, and she was playing the shit out of God Lives Underwater. So when Slipknot made their demo, she was the music director of the K-Rock station there. They gave it to her, and she sent it to me. And she goes, "There's this crazy fucking metal band. You got to see this. They're called Slipknot." I listened to it, but I have a techno label.
Right.
What am I going to do with, and I tried to sign Korn when I was with Def America. I love metal, but
really?
like it just,
wow.
I had Korn's demo, and Rick told me you could pick. You can have Korn or God Lives Underwater. Take your pick. I picked God Lives because they were electronic.
Yeah, man.
Kind of made a mistake on that. But I love Jeff and Dave.
That's the thing. You got to do what you like,
Yeah,
right?
I love you guys. I love Korn too. But anyway, so speed it up. So Slipknot's demo was sitting on my desk. What am I going to do with it? They sent me a dead bird. The demo was Spit It Out, the song.
Yeah.
So my brother, he transitioned from radio to A&R. So he was A&R at Epic Records. He's at my office. The fuck is that? I don't know. It's these mental people from Iowa. The song's pretty cool. Check it out. Whoa. He goes, I'm going to go check it out. So he flew to Clown's basement, watched him play. Clown put on the mask, and he called me and said, they're going to be the biggest band in the world.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, Steve, whatever. Cool. Good luck with that. Sure enough.
He was right, man.
He was right. So he tried to sign him to Epic, and they said, they suck. You can't sign them here. So he goes, you sign them, and I'll be the manager. So I tried to sign it, and my CEO, was like, I'm getting fired. They're merging all these labels.
Yeah.
We have no A&R budget. So I was like, can't sign them, Steve. So he was like, okay, fuck. So Ross Robinson was in there too. He took him to Roadrunner, but they really liked my brother. So he took him to Roadrunner. They signed there. They asked my brother to manage. And so my brother was like, he goes, I'll manage you guys, of course. So what happened was Epic Records found out he was managing them and working there.
Wow.
And they're like, you can't work here and manage a band. And my brother goes, fuck you, I quit, right? And then they were like, whoa. So they flew my brother to New York. And they were like, okay, you know what? You can't work here and manage this band, but we'll give you your own label.
Right.
So they gave him his own label. It's called called No Name, and his first signing was Mudvayne. As it progressed, what happened, long story short, but he got Hatebreed, and then my brother got a brain tumor. And so, and I was doing all my shit, and with all the mergers and everything that happened with my stuff, it all went to shit.
Wow.
And so I just decided, you know what, fuck electronic music and what I'm doing, and I'm just going to go help my brother.
Yeah.
And so I went over there with my brother, and I helped him, worked with him. My brother was like, if you didn't work with him, you were like, if you weren't talking about Slipknot, Mudvayne, Hatebreed, or Head Charge, get the fuck out of my way. I got shit to do, dude.
Right.
So I kind of worked there, but I was just there to help him.
Yeah.
And I was there with him till 2004, and he passed away.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and he never got to see any of this shit because he always, dude, he hated. He was like, oh, that music you like sucks. Like he would brag to everyone,
right?
That my little brother, the music that he likes is awful. There's no songs. Everyone's on drugs. That they don't even record in a real studio. What the fuck is wrong with these people?
Wow. Well, I mean, I gotta thank him, man. I definitely owe him a debt because Slipknot was such a huge band for me as a kid, and I actually, one of my first quote unquote industry jobs, I did street team promo for Slipknot.
For Sickness or for Beano? For Streetwise or Sickness?
Beano.
So you were Streetwise, street rap, passing out the cassette samplers.
Yeah, I
Beano's
still
a good
have
homie of mine.
that's crazy, man. I haven't thought about him in probably 15 years. I still have the cassette demo
samplers.
tape. Yeah, and it has like the early
it out.
demos. It's not the album version, all that.
Sick,
Man.
yeah. Yeah, well, System and Slipknot came up together, and Beano, my brother, like flipped the metal world on their heads because before that, it was
so crazy. You know him, man.
It was the old guard.
Yeah.
Well, I DJ'd on so my brother, they did the Pledge of Allegiance tour, if you remember that.
I do, 100%.
And my brother got me, I was the DJ. So I DJ'd in between System of a Down and like Rammstein, and I was playing
Incredible.
Aphex Twin, Ministry, Black Sabbath, like just weird fucking polygon windows, Aphex Twin noise, like from the sound booth.
Right.
I don't think anyone was paying attention to me, but I was like linking it together. Because I was always trying to link electronic and metal too. Like I had that in me. So it was a time. And then I guess we talked about Head Charge, but what happened with Head Charge was those guys would come to my brother's house and play them the demos. It's totally 3 degrees of Kevin Bacon or whatever, because they were in Rick Rubin's house recording.
Right.
And Rick was trying to get them out of their house because they were like homeless. They all met in Hazleton.
Okay.
At the rehab.
Yeah.
And they had to make a song to get out of the rehab. And so they ended up getting signed because System brought it to Rick. And then they wanted my brother to manage. And they kept coming to my brother. And my brother's like, fucking to get these dudes out of my house. And I was like, Steve, I'd listened to their shit. And, they had 2 keyboard players and samples. And I was like, this is fucking sick.
Right.
And he was like, dude, they suck. They got no songs. Blah, blah, blah. My brother used to fucking torture me. Anything I liked, he hated. So he literally made me get on my hands and knees and like yell, I fucking love American Head Charge. Like, scream that you love him. And then finally he's like, all right, fuck it. He's like, you can do it. He goes, but I don't want to hear anything about it. And fucking they're your problem.
Yeah.
And like, I was like, okay, great. So I got to sign them. And then what happened is when they finally finished the first record, The War of Art, Joey and Paul were at our house. And we told my brother, if you have a brain, because he knew something was wrong with him. We were getting these like doctor checkups. And then they finally were like, you need to have a scan of your brain. And so he said to me, if I have a brain tumor, we're buying a Porsche. So fucking my brother thinks. Okay, cool. We'll buy in a Porsche, Steve. Whatever. I just pray to God you don't have a fucking brain tumor.
Yeah.
So we go to UCLA. They tell us he has a brain tumor. So we buy the goddamn Porsche. And when the guys from Slipknot would come, they would fucking sleep at our house and drive the goddamn Porsche.
Of course.
So what I did was I took the Head Charge CD because my brother was giving me No Love, and I recorded a copy of it with no name on it, and I put it in the CD player. Joey and Paul drove around all day, and they came home, and they go, my brother's nickname was Rocker. Rocker. What the fuck was in this Porsche? What CD was in there? I told you it was fucking Head Charge. Next thing you know, they got the world tour with Slipknot.
Man.
But once again, there was a heroin addict in there. Yeah. Not one, but 2 people died. And so my two bands that I put my heart and soul and my life into, they both had intravenous drug users, and they both had people pass away, and they both never made it.
It's so sad, man. It's, and I think about like this generation, especially in the hip hop world, it's the Xanax, and it's, we don't have to get too far down that road, but it's been on my mind a lot lately because it's,
Put it like this, drugs kill.
Yeah.
That shit's for real. I've lived it. I've seen it. And like, it sucks, but it's true. And you don't need that shit to enjoy music.
Well, and you see, this is the last thing I'll say about it. You see the people who are successful with long careers in the business, even if they were partying at the start, the ones that make it, they've stopped,
Unless you're Keith Richards.
Well, right. There's one and only.
Yeah. But yeah, look, drugs eventually they kill you, I mean, look, you can have like what my dad would always say, moderation, right? You have a couple beers, whatever. Look, I just recently heard sad news, Chad Hanks, he was the bass player in Head Charge. I think he passed away on Sunday. 10 years ago, the guy would come to my house and literally drink 2 bottles of vodka like in a night.
It's crazy, man.
I don't that's going to kill you. What are you doing?
I don't know if you're familiar with the rapper Lil Peep, but he passed away last night.
Really?
He OD'd.
Oh, no way.
He was, I didn't know him personally, but so influential. Young kid, 18, 19.
Ugh, horrible.
Yeah. It's just...
Drugs kill kids.
Yeah, they run through the industry, man. But let's get off of that because I want to move us forward and talk about kind of the reason we're here in this office.
Okay, cool. We'll wrap it up with the bow.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, so, you started hard was it 2007? Was that the first?
Yeah, so basically what happened, so in 2004, my brother passed away.
Yeah. I
was like, what am I going to do with my life? I put out a bunch of records. I still did like metal records. And then what happened was I just realized people don't buy records. And they really don't buy electronic records.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I'll try and do a concert. And so I went around all of 2006 and just kind of looked at what was going on. And most of the music that was being played was, trance, Ferry Corsten, Marcus Schultz, Tiesto, that's what was going on at the concerts. And I was finding things like Justice and Crystal Castles and Boys Noise, and no one was booking it or doing anything. So I thought I'll just, instead of trying to make a record with them, I'll sell a ticket to their show, but I'll just keep marketing their music like they were on my label.
That's smart.
And that's how it started.
The first one, coming back to it after all those years, coming back to throwing a show, I assume you would approach it probably completely differently.
Oh, yeah, that was ridiculous what I did. I shut down 4 streets in downtown Los Angeles. The show should have just been in the Shrine or the Palladium.
Right.
I had no idea what I was doing, but I pulled it off. But it was a complete mess, production and financially. But when I saw 5,000 people, 21 and over, without glow sticks, without ravers, cool kids from the East Side smoking a cigarette, watching Justice, I was like, okay, there's something, this is fucking dope.
Yeah, it's back to the original concept, right? When you were talking about the sermon, it's not just sort of the people who want to come and get wasted or just see it as a party. It's people, because at that time, 2007, 08, Justice is coming out. People like Diplo and all them, are coming.
I didn't even know about Diplo. On that first line, I had an A-Track because he was Kanye's DJ.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, I got to have Kanye's DJ. Aoki was on it because he was like the cool kid in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Peaches was on it because Peaches was on XL, and, I'd love Peaches forever. I had 2 Live Crew because of my hip-hop roots. But there were so many cool things on there.
And what I always love, man, about your lineups is, and this might just be my perception, but I feel like you can tell they're booked by a DJ.
Yeah.
It felt like.
Right on. Thank you.
Yeah, that's just how I feel, man. It's because I think a lot of lineups now in many festivals, it's kind of just the same thing over and over, and kind of even if it's famous or cool people, it's sort of bland,
It's booked by what's going to make money.
Right.
I always book by what I would want to see.
Yeah.
I want to see Peaches, Justice, and 2 Live Crew.
Yeah.
That's dope.
Well,
I don't know why that was what I wanted to see.
Because you're a DJ, man.
To be honest with you, what I really wanted, I wanted Justice and Mastercraft, and I got hosed. But then Mastercraft ended up coming because they played some other party that sucked, and then they ended up doing the second one with Pharrell. So it was NERD and Mastercraft. So I got my way eventually.
Well, and that's, as these events get bigger and bigger for 10 years after 2007, I just had a conversation with a pretty big manager who will remain nameless, and he was complaining that his biggest gripe out of all this explosion and success and everyone making money is that the egos also got bigger, right? And the radius clauses and the restrictions and all of that. And he was saying, he didn't know another way around it, but he felt like it was almost killing his enthusiasm for all the good parts of it.
Let me tell you one thing, right? I'm a music person. I'm not really a concert promoter, and I'll say this on record. My job's to promote artists, not block them. and any way I can help any artist, I always will forever. I mean, I had heroin addicts on my couch dying, you know what I mean? Like my job, first and foremost is to help promote music and art. I understand the struggle and what people go through, and I would never block anyone. Obviously you have to be business, and if you're doing a show, then you want to sell out your show. But once your show's sold out, all good. Go do what you want.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to control your life or the world through a radius clause. I'm trying to promote. I'm a promoter. You promote. You don't block. We're not blockers. We're promoters.
I can only imagine how much of a headache it must have been for you over the years too, as more and more festivals pop up and, harder to get artists to play.
But you know what? There's always dope artists that those blockers don't know about, because the blockers don't know about them until we promote them.
Right.
So fuck you.
So that actually leads in perfectly to my next question, which is, what do you look for in an artist you want to book? A new artist. Like what stands out to you? What qualities? Because I think people always wonder, how do I get booked on something like that?
I think the most important thing is just to be original and unique. I try to find, the thing that will resonate with me first is, will I play the track in my set?
Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, I'm going to play that in my set. Then if I play that track in my set and it does well, and then you make another one that I play in my set, because that's how it happened with the Prodigy. There was no plan. They just made Charlie, then everybody's in the place. And then, with electronic music, it's different because it's not like you hear a hit song and there's like a hit record. You hear the production and it was the same thing with Deadmau5. What's Deadma 5? And then all of a sudden you hear the 5th record from Deadma 5 and you're like, this dude's dope. Okay, because sometimes you get a happy accident and somebody makes one good record. But, once you've heard 3 or 4 from the same guy that's like really dope, then they're in. That's really it.
Yeah. Well, and you became kind of known for, launching artists and breaking artists who would then go on to be pretty big, right? I feel like Deadmau5 and Skrillex and Justice, I associate them with being broken in at hard events, right?
Yeah. Well, I tried not just to book them, but to promote their music.
Right.
I took that theory that every one of these guys was on my record label,
right,
even though I didn't sign any of them.
Yeah, and that's, I feel you can see artists have such a loyalty to you and to, what was the hard brand, and I can't think of anyone else, any other promoter event that kind of engenders that loyalty,
It's because I'm a record guy. I make records and music, so that's.
Well, and hearing you talk about building with them and not just booking them,
Yeah, I hit up Wes last night. I texted him. I watched the movie that they did in Cuba. I'm so proud of that guy. The first time I met Wes, his manager called me. I didn't even know who he was.
Yeah,
and he said Diplo wants to get down with you, and I was like, okay. What does that mean? He'll come and play for free.
Yeah.
And I was like, bet, done. How cool is that, right? He's putting and he showed up with fucking Little John and destroyed the place. And from that day on, dude, God bless,
He was the first kind of big artist to really support my music and put it on a bigger platform. He was the first person to do this show with me. He's been a big figure in my life too, man. I have a lot of respect for him. Basically, we don't have to talk about every year, but 10 years of hard, right? And I just came out to the last one. You were nice enough to put me on the list very last minute.
I'm glad you were there.
Yeah, man. And I watched your set. It was cool to kind of get everyone partying up there and just give it a proper send-off. The last one, we talked about the first one all the way to the last one. What was your mood that last day? Was it a bitter... Did you know you were leaving at that point?
Yeah. It was bittersweet, but to be honest with you, I felt like it was the perfect way to complete the cycle. I did 10 years, Marauder came out and graciously did Last Dance.
Yep.
And then, Sonny and Alex and Snoop, I got Snoop, I met Snoop, I got his cell, we're homies now.
Right.
The show went flawless, everybody got home safe. It went really smooth. And it was just a perfect way to end that chapter. And I feel like, now I can do something new and different with a new brand, starting from scratch, and it can be whatever. It's a blank canvas. And for me,
That's got to be a little freeing, right?
Yeah, it was time, man, because it was just getting so big, and it was never meant to be that big. And I'm so happy that it did get that big. But if you would have ever told me Justin Bieber was going to play it hard for free, I would have said, who the are we in some weird acid trip right now? But I couldn't think of any better way to cap it off. My daughter, my son was there, my wife, everybody on stage with me. And it's time for something new, and I think it's better to go out on top and start something new than to just, right now that's just a, at this point it's just a cash cow. Like you can't be as creative and cool with it anymore because it's just too big. Like I can't think, what would I want to see? It's like, okay, I got to get 150,000 people here. Like we need fucking New Kids on the Block. Like you need some mega shit to sell those tickets.
I mean, at this point, the company was owned by Live Nation, which I'm sure brings a lot more cooks into the kitchen.
Well, they always let me do what I wanted to, but, at the end of the day, it started to get a little weird with the electronic cooks in that kitchen. So I needed to be free to go do my thing. I was basically down to one show and one boat. Right. And now where we're sitting, I'm down to thousands of shows and multiple boats. And
multiple boats, is that right?
Oh, yeah. We're going to be doing, I got to get to work.
Yeah. Okay, man.
But we got a lot. Like next time we do this, I'll lay out the game plan of what the future holds, because right now I'm just building the pipeline, and we'll be throwing all the oil and new stuff through very soon.
Absolutely, man. And we didn't get to talk about Holy Shit, but that's another kind of groundbreaking thing that I think it built a new community that didn't exist before, and I think that's really cool. Oh, yeah. Wow. Yeah. That is the Holy Ship 2012 brochure.
That was the first one.
Man. Before we get to the first Holy Ship, just the first memory that pops into your head before we get out of here.
Well, it's crazy because the boat got stuck on a reef on the first night. So we basically went and my partner decided to go into the Bahamas on the backside instead of through the main channel. And we got stuck, and they were going to have to evacuate the ship.
Yeah.
And it could have been disastrous. Here's a photo of the tugboats trying to pull us out.
Oh my God.
And a week later, the Costa Concordia had hit that side of that mountain in Italy, and we avoided disaster.
Right.
I was praying to my brother. I was like, Steve, get us off this reef, please, God.
Oh, man.
Just get us off this reef,
Steve.
Be
a terrifying
Help
moment.
me out here, buddy. And yeah, we got off the reef, and the boat was fine. So, but that almost didn't happen.
This has been such an epic conversation. I usually like to try to end by, if it's somebody I know, and I don't know you well, but I was trying to think of when I first encountered you, first met you. And I don't know if you remember this, but I just remembered the other day, the very first Spring Awakening music festival in Chicago, I played right before you at the afternoon. Like, I think I was 2:00 and you were 3:00, something like that.
Were we on the, was it the stage with Laidback Luke?
Exactly.
And I dressed up as Spider-Man and no one else dressed up. Because you're supposed to be a Marvel comic, and I was like all into it. Because I get all into it. I'm going to support.
Yeah.
And nobody dressed up at me, and I felt like an idiot with a Spider-Man mask on.
I remember I saw you, and I was like, oh, that must be his thing. He wears a Spider-Man mask.
No. Yeah, I remember that. Well, what's cool now is I'm I work with Spring Awakenings, and, we have, that was really cool that we were in Soldier Field, and we were on the side of Soldier Field.
We were, but
we got
still.
to go in Soldier Field.
Yeah. But it was just a cool moment, man, because I had been a fan of what you've been doing for a long time. I'm still a fan of what you're doing, and just as someone who works in this industry, man, personally, thank you for doing what you've done. It's pretty wild to see where this has all come to.
Well, let's keep it going. Look, I at this point, I'm pretty confident. I've gotten a long run, and I know that I can only do it bigger and better. And that's where we're going. And now I've got support. So it's a new day in 2018.
Fuck yeah, man. I couldn't think of a better way to end that. Well, Gary, man, thank you so much for doing this.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right, that's the show. I want to thank Destructo so much for having me over to the office, letting me sit down and rap with you, man. Hopefully we can do it again soon. Do not forget, Destructo just put out Loaded with Yo Gotti, and he just announced the Let's Be Friends tour kicking off in 2018. All the dates, all the music, there's going to be a link in the description of this episode to go check it out. My name is Willy Joy. You can holler at me at all social media at Willy Joy. You can email me at backtobackpod@gmail.com. Hope you guys are having a good holiday season. I can't believe the year's almost ending. We got just one more episode for you next week before the end of the year, and it is a good one. I'm not going to spoil the surprise. It'll be a late Christmas present for you. Have a good holiday season, guys. I love you. This is Willy Joy. Back to back. Out. Peace.